response to community recommendations update. Chief Schlittler, Deputy Chief Baker, welcome. Good evening. Nice to see you.
You as well.
Thank you. So we are here for an update, and we received some information about what has been done since we had a prior discussion on this. So I will turn it over. If you could walk us through what the updates are.
Sure.
From your department.
Thank you for having us tonight. I'll go through the recommendation and the updates, the ones that we've updated since the last time. The meet regularly with stakeholders was a recommendation. Groups and communities of color to build mutual trust and respect. We've set up quarterly meetings with Needham housing residents to discuss policing and services that the department may provide. I'm also going to be a panelist on the Diversity Summit in Needham in November. And I did meet with some of the leaders of Nuwari to discuss the challenges of outreach to our BIPOC community members in town. We've also spoken with the Human Rights Committee, working with the Assistant Town Manager to assist in the potential creation of a response team to bias-based incident. I've recently reached out to the Indian community of Needham to meet with the group and discuss the Needham Police Department and answer some questions regarding policing. So those are some of the new things that we've updated in that. And then the next recommendation that we want to update is find ways to educate the public on the role of police officers, such through a Citizens Academy. We'll be hosting Citizens Police Academy starting tomorrow night through November 22nd. And this past summer, we did host a Junior Police Academy, which was filled to capacity, actually over capacity. We made some exceptions to get additional people in. And then emphasize training on mental health issues, threshold inquiries, de-escalation. All of our officers have completed de-escalation mental health techniques for first responders. De-escalation has been emphasized in every use of force training scenario that we do. And we do train multiple times a year on this. Training tactics include verbal communication, slowing down the pace of incidents, warnings, waiting out a person, creating distance and cover, and calling in additional resources to assist. Since the December, we have our community outreach program and our embedded clinical social worker. We've had outreach and contacts in excess of 66 different times. And just actually today, I received an email from a family member of a party that Officer David Forte has been assisting, and he couldn't say how much it's meant to him, his family, of the work that we're doing with his family member to assist him through the struggles. And David has been such a great asset for our community in the outreach program. And you can see the difference in terms of us responding to critical incidents in terms of people suffering from mental health, because there's always constant communication. I mean, it's not, we can't force them to, but a lot of people have been willing and accepting of Officer Forte's approach, working with the social worker and the health department in town. It's been a great collaborative effort, but you can see the difference, and it's making quite an impact for our residents. And I think our approach to mental health is, what we've done with the CIT and, mental health first aid and the outreach program is really probably one of the more thorough programs that are around in police departments, because it's something that we know how important it is, and the stress that it not only causes for the people that were responding and their families, but for our officers, because it puts them in very difficult situations. And I think we go above and beyond the approach, and it's hopefully something that we can expand on if we find we need additional resources. And the town has always been very acceptable and helping in us getting the resources we need. Threshold inquiry, we've not only is that going to be addressed in the annual in-service training this spring, we will also address the department training this fall and winter. And again, de-escalation is in every use of force and scenario-based training that we do. And for an example, we had officers respond to a party that had attempted suicide, and our officers waited and talked to the person for 30 to 40 minutes before they were able to get that party to come out and take him to the critical care facility that he needed to. And I know that's a lot different response that would have happened when I first came on, because, you know, we just not something we were really prepared for, but we have done a lot of work in that area. And I can go over it. So our in-service training, which is mandated, the Mass Police Training Council in service for this year. So all officers will be required to take classes that responding to emergencies involving mentally ill, cultural competency, CPR, first responder, mass gatherings, de-escalation, use of force, legal updates, human trafficking, officer wellness series, mental wellness, officer wellness series, critical incident stress management, and officer wellness series, suicide prevention, question, persuade, and refer. The post commission, so implement all local components of the new state police reform and laws, and additional guidance is made available. The post commission members have been approved, and we're starting to receive some correspondence from post. Probably the most relevant one is in terms of, I'd say, internal affairs and discipline. As of September, any internal affairs investigative materials or complaints that we get, we have to send into the post commission. We haven't had to do that yet. I'm not sure how their response is going to be, but as of now, we're mandated to do that, and there's a place for us to send it to. The use of force, we have updated, and all officers have reviewed the new use of force policy, which is consistent with the language required by legislation. So basically what we did is we took the verbiage that was used in the legislation in terms of a use of force policy, because the model policy is not out. We've incorporated all that language into our use of force policy. So it's, as we feel, it's as up to date as we can with the legislation. And as soon as the model policy does come out, we will make any additional changes based on the model policy. But we feel that it's pretty close to where it's going to be when they send that policy out. But we want to make sure we got that language in there as soon as possible. And we've also, I'm working with the updated school resource officers memorandum of understanding and policy, just the changes to reflect post. I'm working with Superintendent Gudikantz on that, and we'll be presenting to the Needham School Committee later this month. And
Whenever you're done.
sure.
Go ahead.
And absolutely. Thanks for being here, both of you. And so I guess my question is, do we have any idea when the sample policy will be released? And then as I'm looking down to what you just said about assigning a lieutenant to monitor the post compliance, what does that imply? Like, you know, how does that work? That they're monitoring, but what is the process, I guess?
So with the post commission, there's certain mandates that they're requiring, some of them be in place by December, some of them be in place by July of next year. So the lieutenant is also working on policies, but is working on post compliance to make sure that we're keeping up to date in terms of deadlines that we have to meet. And it's easier that way if we have one person in charge of that. So if any changes comes out, that we can update those policies as needed. I do not have a time frame on when that model policy comes out, but we did, you know, there have been some policies in itself, the Mass Chiefs Association and some other chiefs from the city chiefs. So we've taken all that incorporated, and we think it's the closest thing at this point that will be relevant to the policy sent out by post.
It's posted on the site.
And it's posted on, we
On
posted
the
that
site.
new policy on the website as well.
Okay. And then,
Marcus?
yep, and then going a little bit further, it hasn't been updated yet, but it still says that the board, select board is serving as the oversight body of Needham Police Department until post-commission role is defined. So has that still not happened? The commission has not been defined as far as the role?
It has, but
Okay.
all I can say now is what we've been instructed to do is that we do have any internal affairs investigations as oversight, we have to send it into the post commission.
Okay.
And how they break that down and deal with it and get back to us, I'm not sure of that process at this time.
So how do we, I guess, factor into that? So you're sending it to the post commission. Are we included in that still in some capacity, or is it still just going to the post?
If we have an internal affairs investigation, I will make the town manager aware of that investigation. And if it's appropriate, I'll forward that information.
Okay.
Good for now. Thank you. All right. Chief?
So we get to that one. All right. The department is hiring. So one of them is creating the dashboard. We have compiled that for 18, 19, and 20. We just offered up the data analyst position to a party who accepted that position. And we hope that she's going to be in place the beginning of November. And this is somebody that comes with a lot of experience in data analysis with the Drug Enforcement Administration. So this is somebody who has a lot of experience of breaking down numbers and facts and so forth, and putting them into certain categories and breaking that down for their investigations and operations. So this is somebody that's going to come to it with a lot of experience, and I think ability to work with us to help create that dashboard and maybe add some different things and maybe, shape it up to what we think that the town wants.
Yes, I know we previously discussed, waiting to hire somebody for that position. And we had a conversation, I believe last time you were here, instead of annually, to consider doing it monthly. And I think that would be more appropriate for the community and for the town if we have somebody in that role that's going to be solely working on that. And I know you had said before that it's kind of a lot to have somebody else in the force that's not dedicated to this role to do something like that. So I just want to push for more of a monthly update instead of a yearly, if that's something that we're going to be pushing to hire someone for directly for that role.
Sure. I mean, I think that's something we'll definitely look at. And if it's not monthly, maybe it's quarterly, depending on the amount of information that's out there. But it's something that I think we need to get somebody in place and kind of see what they're comfortable with or how it rolls out. I just don't have a lot of background in that. So I think it's something that's definitely open for discussion. But, if it's something that we do quarterly or monthly or biannually.
Okay, so we'll follow back up after they get
Sure.
adjusted, because they're not starting until November, or you said November? Is that?
November.
Okay, yeah, so we'll follow back up.
November 14th.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I know one of the things we talked about of doing it monthly is if you have certain incidents that happen, then numbers, because it's a small number, but that it might look like it's a huge increase when it's not, when you take it and when you look at it on a year basis. So it's something that we have to keep in mind that we want to look at and make sure that, we're getting the information out there without it looking like it's different than it really is.
Right, and I think even if it's monthly and doing that, if we just speak to it and we have the verbiage to kind of say, this is what's happening, I think that'll be fine, even though it may, on the small scheme, look like it's this huge, difference. If we're laying it out and being intentional about what we're saying, I believe as somebody that lives in the community would understand that, and I hope all of us would, but we'll see.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think you have to make it so that, and we do the same with COVID, when you track it and you want to make sure that that block of data is actually going to represent something, and maybe statistically it is too small to do a month, but I think we'd leave it up to you to try to find. I think yearly, you're right, is, too much. But what is the happy medium between that to give us relevant data instead of these peaks and valleys that don't make a lot of sense?
And that's for
Right. I
discussion.
think it's a process of just kind of get everything in place and seeing how it rolls out and then making adjustments as we go along.
Great.
Let's have her start first.
Marianne?
And I would just say, I support kind of finishing out this year the way that we've been doing it, rather than at this point trying to catch up on 10 months.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then- So, but if we could start thinking about it fresh when we get to a fresh year, that seems like
Yeah,
a good
yeah.
approach.
Agreed.
That gives us a lot of time to get understood.
All right, next.
Threshold inquiries, we talked briefly about it. The NPD's use of force policy doesn't require the officer to report handcuffing or confining individuals. However, the threshold inquiry policy does require that reporting of every investigative detention to include the identity of the person stopped and all important facts relevant to the incident. We've also added the special reporting feature to all incident reports. So every time an officer completes an incident report, they'll be required to check off a box that indicates if the person was handcuffed or not, so that we can actually now go in and run a record of that to get the total number. So in addition to the MPTC annual criminal law and criminal procedure updates training, the topic of threshold inquiries was addressed in annual in-service training this spring. As mentioned before, that's something we're going to do again this fall and winter. The eyewitness identification, that policy is under review. And one of the questions that was brought up during the Tidwell report was the use of RMV photos to identify suspects. The issue that we face sometimes with putting a photo array together is that the person doesn't have any other photos than the RMV, but it's also only used as a last resort, and other issues or other evidence would be needed to go forward. And that would be a requirement of the district attorney's office as well. So when we send a report over, they'd have to determine probable cause. And a lot of it would have to be based on more than just the photo array itself.
A quick question, Chief.
Yes,
Sure.
Marcus?
Yeah, going back to use of force and handcuffing, as far as the dashboard, is that going to be one of the things that's added in there? You might have said that, but I was trying to find where I was in.
No, I didn't say it, but
Yeah.
yes, it will be.
Okay, all right, that's good. Thank you.
The one thing to just remember is anybody that's arrested is handcuffed. So we'll probably break it up to
Intention, yeah.
unarrested and so forth.
Okay.
Right. Let's see. Training appropriate investigative method. So follow-up investigation. This follow-up investigations, we addressed the policy. It was updated and it was issued to all officers in August. Courtesy to the public. Obviously, I'm committed to ensuring that all our officers are courteous and respectful to everybody that they deal with. The rules and regulations for this request, we updated that as well and issued it to all of our officers. We also addressed for the officer's identification. That was issued again and reviewed by all officers in August. Same with the officer's identification badge number. The rules and regulations for this, again, was in August, so we did all those in the same time frame. Also, in internal affairs policy, articulation of the standard of proof. So I've reached out to the Mass Chief's Legal to receive some feedback on this, because the articulation and the standard of proof, when you're dealing with an officer, and I think it was recommended that the preponderance of the evidence, which is to be found responsible, that's 51%. And I did review Cambridge's internal affairs policy. It did not have that standard in there, the preponderance of the evidence, more specific and articulable facts. And I am waiting on some guidance from Post, because last correspondence I did have, there was an indication that the preponderance of the evidence would be enough to send it in for review of certification, but that there'd be a much higher standard to revoke the certification of a police officer. So that kind of works in the way that we do with all people that are involved in incidents, that the probable cause is 51%, and then it goes over to court and they establish if there's probable cause to go forward, but the standard of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt. So that seems to correlate with what we're doing. So I'm trying to find the the right verbiage for that and waiting back on some correspondence from legal.
Okay.
Is there anyone that has different percentages, or is it fluctuate, or is that how it is standard across, say, the nation? Or is it something that is what's present in Massachusetts?
So it's kind of split. So there are departments that have preponderance of the evidence, and then there are departments that have specific and articulable facts to determine if the officer, did violate a policy or so forth. It's a lot of times if you look at, if somebody comes in and has an issue and complaint, a lot of times it could be he said, she said, and that's 50%. So it's a pretty low standard. So I want to make sure that we're doing what's right for everybody involved, because, with this whole certification process for police officers, we just don't know what's going to happen going forward. So I want to make sure that everything is in place, that we are able to investigate the things, but that if there is an issue, that we have the right guidance going forward to make sure that we can make a determination that's, relative to the post commission.
Thank you.
Publish the names of rank and role and training of all MPD employees. All the officers' ranks and divisions are listed on the website. And we're going to make a summary of all of our training that'll be on our annual report. I think that's the best way to do it, because we do have a lot of training. And officers, do a lot of, we have mandatory training for all our officers, and then there are some specialized training. So I think in order to do that, we can put that on the annual report, which I think will be the best case scenario going forward for that. Again, we've talked about the use of force policy. Mental health, I think we've covered enough.
Yes.
And the SROs, I think is, I think we've spoken about the SROs, and there's some information in there from Dr. Gudikantz regarding our SROs. And I think the last thing we'll touch on is they should be considered becoming an accredited department. It's been a goal of the department to participate in the accreditation process through the Mass Police Accreditation Commission. So be accredited through the Mass Police Commission. And it's not national, but it's just Mass, and that's what the departments in Massachusetts do, because the laws vary and vary across the United States in terms of, search and seizure and so forth, and thresholds. So that's something that we're looking to do. But part of that process, the station and the holding facility and so forth, is something that we would not have passed at the time. So coming up in January, February, the new station will alleviate a lot of that. So we've assigned a lieutenant to begin the accreditation process is in 2 stages. There's a certification process, which is the first step, and then you move on to the second step, which is accreditation. And that's something that we are going to proceed with and deal with as we get into the new station and beyond. But it is something that takes a lot of time, and it's really something that we're going to have to dedicate a lieutenant and probably a sergeant or a police officer to deal with, because it's something that initially has to be done on a full-time basis, because if not, you're going to be spinning your wheels trying to keep up and to meet those standards. So it's a difficult process, but I think we'll be able to meet that goal.
Great. Thank you, Chief, and thank you for all the work and updates that you've given us. Just before I turn it over for questions, I did see about the Needham Police Citizens Academy, and you have a nice little agenda here going through week 6. Can you just describe a little bit who that's tailored to and how the signups are and what you're looking to accomplish?
Sure. So I think the big thing was when we did this, to set it up to things that, one, that we want the community to know a breakdown of our officers and kind of what their individual responsibilities, and then also dive a little bit deeper into what they do, how they do it, why they do it, what laws might be in place to guide them and they do it, and why certain things are done in a certain reason. But then also there's a process of putting the students in kind of real life situations where they're going to see that this is the process we do, that they're going to have to make decisions in terms of the Milo, that they'll have to make decisions in real time. And, you know, there's one where we're going to take them through some accident investigation, but we're also going to let them run the radar and see how, you know, that the radar will capture the speed of a vehicle from 300 yards away. So that to show that, hey, listen, it's not the car goes by, we get a speed that coming down West Street, for example, as it comes down the hill, we get it at the top of the hill. So we'll show you that how that process works, and that we're going to actually break down motor vehicle stops in the parking lot. So they're going to get an idea how an officer comes from, you know, goes, how they park kind of, and how they approach the car and what they might see and what they might not see. So it's going to give them a real life look into the difficulties of this job, and, you know, that you have to make decisions sometimes that under a lot of stress and a lot of pressure, and not with all the relevant information at the time. But we also want them to know that, like I said before about the enforcement side, there is a portion of that we do, but we're going to get a really good look into all the community things that we do in terms of outreach and helping people with services, and helping the members of our community that are in need and that are struggling with different things, that we're there to help them as well.
Right, the human side, for lack of a better word.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, discussion.
Yeah.
Marcus.
Just a question on that, and I know we discussed it before, the idea of Zoom or whatever it may be, but I think because of live action things that are happening, people may not be recorded. As far as presentations for these different topics, for the people that were not able to attend this for one reason or another, will they be in like a PowerPoint form or something? We'll be able to kind of see how things went, or to take a look at. Would that be available for the public, or a possibility as the weeks go on, or maybe a wrap up that kind of summarizes each week in some capacity? And I think that'd be a good use of not only doing it in person, but making it more accessible to people that may not have been able to sign up or get there.
I'll look at that. You know, we're trying to get through the program the
Right.
first time. It's the first time, so there's a lot going on. We're using numerous members of the department to do that.
Right.
So I'm going to be there probably most weeks in the
Okay.
beginning. So
Yeah.
I'll take a look at it. If it's something that we can put out a short, you know, some information on, then we'll do that.
Okay, yeah, I just think about planning and presenting. I'm sure there's gonna be people that will have, you know, come with materials to kind of use and whatnot.
Good. Marianne.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate all the updates, and I know that you've been working hard on all these different parts from the various recommendations this year. And I do know that we'll be a better force because of it. So that's a good thing. I'm curious, I don't know, one of the meetings that's been taking place, for example, has been with the one with the Needham housing residents. Is there anything that you learned, or that somebody came back and articulated from one of those meetings that was a wow, hadn't realized that before, hadn't thought about that? I'm just curious about it.
Yeah, I've been to both. And I think the big thing that we've learned is that, you know, they want to see us. They want us to see our presence. They want us to be out on foot. They want us engaging with the children and the residents. And, you know, obviously COVID put a stop to what we were doing prior, but we're getting back into that mode. But I think there's a lot of room there for collaboration, that they're looking, because I think sometimes they feel like they're on the outskirts of town sometimes, and they might not necessarily be, for less, you know, lack of a better word, part of the community sometimes. And we want to be one of those agencies that we can, if we can bridge the gap somehow and provide some, you know, assistance in any manner to get them, you know, so that they feel that they're part, at least with the police department. And then if we can bring in some other agencies and so forth to assist, then we'll do that. But, you know, some of the questions were, you know, it was a little bit difficult at times, but I think I think we both have a common goal that, we're all part of the community. We're part of the solve, we're there to help and solve the problems, and we're part of that. And it's a collaborative effort, and they're willing and they're reaching out. And I think, as we go forward, that will be a bigger part of, with that community. Cause, I said this when we first started the Coffee with the Cop up at the senior center, and the first time we haven't been up there in a while, and there was a lot of complaints and they're speeding and doing all this. And, but as we continued, it was more of just, conversation and talking about different things. Yeah, there might be some issues that they want to discuss, but they felt comfortable just talking to us. They were glad to see us. And, we hope that that's, where we're going with these meetings as well. But we bring down, we have our Needham housing liaison, our community outreach officer, our clinician, our community service officer was down there as well. So, and myself. So we had 5 or 6 people that are going to go down to these meetings. And I think it's a representation of the majority of the police department, and that we're there to help.
Thank you.
And so I appreciated the conversation earlier about thinking about, the dashboards, and I had quarterly, Marcus is at monthly, so we're all at more frequency than annually, and we'll get there. But one of the other things that particular recommendation made me think about is we've talked a few times about how the police department, how the technology maybe doesn't support your operations as well as they should. And one of the other examples that I was thinking of was the example of the call with the dog, right? That came in and then you guys were moving and the call got lost. So to me, it's all the do it once and have it in the system so it's tracked. And it sounds like that's not the kind of system that we have right now. So I'm hoping, I just wanted to take this opportunity to say, as we're looking forward, to the extent that there are pieces of technology that can get the force to doing it once so that it is tracked and is not as onerous for you to create these statistics and be able to learn from what the operations really are, to improve them, that's something that I'm hoping that we'll all be attuned to and that we'll be able to support as we're looking out. And I just don't know what's available in there, but I know there's a perception in general with police departments across the US that they've been under-resourced in some ways from a technology perspective to help move do the business of just doing the work of the department. So I don't know what's out there, but I'm hoping somebody knows what's out there. The last note that I had, was just thinking about this customer service aspect. And I suppose that this is something that's almost townwide. I don't know whether there's, like the Press Ganey equivalent that we have in hospitals, right, for just looking at municipal customer service and how we think about that. I don't think it's a top priority for us, but I don't know that if there's something out there, just if we see it and track that. But I was thinking about that as well. I know we have so many interactions with people, and some of them are fabulous and some of them are less than fabulous. We learn from all of them. So at any rate, but thank you for all the work.
Thank you, Marianne. Dan?
Yeah, I'm appreciative of all the work that's gone into this, and the fact that you built on it monthly. I think some of my comments and questions may actually not be for you, but just because this is the subject. I mean, this is a hard time to be in your line of work. It doesn't do you any good to come here and tell us that. We had to find the right way to voice that to our own public in the way that that they can understand and appreciate. And they'll push back on us, but then we'll find out how we're supposed to communicate. I think in particular, some of the criticism that I've seen from people who are very educated and involved members of the community who have said that the town has not taken the perceived issues with policing here or nationally seriously, and that we've tried to broom that or sweep that under the rug, either in specific cases that we've dealt with or with policies generally. We know that the exact opposite of that is true. that, that we recognize that it's difficult work and we support the people that work for us. But you, Chief, and the officer and the officers and all the staff have worked really to listen, to understand, to find areas where we need to improve, which we have identified, and you're reporting to us every 60 days. And it's a lot of work, and we're posting it on our website. And the people that I talked about at the top of this paragraph are not, they don't see that or acknowledge it. And this is an issue for us. I don't know exactly what, doesn't necessarily mean issue a lot of press releases, but we have to find ways to communicate to our own constituents. I'm thinking of the analogy. There are plenty of people that complain about individual things that happen at the school department. But if you ask around, people say, yeah, Needham has pretty good schools. And I think the same is true of all of our public services and the police department in particular. We have to find a way to address that, we as a board. How many sworn officers do you have now, and do you have any vacancies?
Currently, we have 6 vacancies.
Okay, and how many on staff do you have? How many sworn officers on staff do you have right now?
We're at 47.
47, okay, that's good. I have one really, the report is really detailed and very helpful. And you've given a good summary, but there's a lot more here. I have this is a small suggestion, which is I assume we're going to continue to use this format going forward and build on it. A casual reader might not understand or might have trouble seeing that each item begins with a recommendation, the status of that as in June, and then an update paragraph, and then continues all the way through. I would simply number all of the recommendations. There's about 35 of them, and it shows that each one of those is a work area for you guys. That and the progress is reported there. I would just do that going forward. The issue about the statistics, I guess I would do it. I think the annual makes sense, and then once you've got another quarter of results, add them. And I think once you get your statistician in and the data is going in, you should then off of that be able to run it every month or whenever you do the updates, then run the year to date to that point. I think that, 1 month can be off, but once you've got a quarter and you're building a year to date stats, it would show. The question of the standard of proof, it was there, as I would understand it, and I could be mistaken, but specific articulatable facts can actually be a lower standard than preponderance of the evidence, because when it's 2 versions, you don't get to a preponderance unless you decide one of them is more believable than the other. Whereas specific facts can be something just that there's enough to warrant taking an action here, which might be less than knowing that you've got everything. So I think you've got some difficult choices. I think the reference to using the Massachusetts accreditation makes a lot of sense. My layperson's understanding of this is that Massachusetts is probably well ahead of a lot of states in addressing these issues, and that although there'll be differences, probably Massachusetts will be higher than any initial national standard that gets implemented. I'm willing to be corrected on that, but that would be my.
Massachusetts tends to be ahead of the curve. And there's a concerted effort in Massachusetts law enforcement to get it right and to do it right. And we have been doing that for some time. And, I think with this mass accreditation, like you said, is we tend to be ahead of the curve, having been down at the FBI Academy in Virginia with departments from all over the world. It's numerous times it was revealed by instructors that Massachusetts tends to try and get it right and is ahead of the curve compared to nationally.
I know that, for example, when you see these cases of an officer who has been dismissed from one department, can turn up in another department in that state or in another state. I think that my impression is we have safeguards against that here, that
We do. So we do background checks, and part of that is a review of the personnel file at the other police departments. So there have been cases where we've had officers trying to lateral over, and the information during the background and from resources within that department have made us stay away from those officers. The certification process is something that the Massachusetts Chief of Police have been pushing for 7 to 10 years. It's something that we wanted, we encouraged, and it really didn't come to fruition until the new post reform came out. So that's something that we support wholeheartedly.
And then one thing that's not in the recommendations, or at least called out specifically, but I think it, other than our question about of our collective bargaining goal of exiting civil service, is I believe there's a need for us to work to have greater diversity in our force. And I know that we're really limited under the civil service system, that we've set a goal of bargaining ourselves out of that, and that's something that's engaged, that's all the time. But it may be that, say, as we're looking through how the post commission or further legislative action or what experience of other departments, if there are opportunities that we might have to get good diversity hires that will improve our ability to provide service to the community, apart or parallel to the work we're trying to do in collective bargaining, that might be a help.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Further comments or
Yeah, thank you.
questions? No? I will close then and just tell you, or you already know, and Dan hinted on it, it's a lot of work to, we're looking at 10 pages here and the resources that you have. And I think you talked about the vacancies that you have, but I think in talking to police officers, look at the academy and people, low numbers, right, of people who want to step in the shoes of the people on the force. So I think as a community, we appreciate all your work. And I think the way we appreciate your work is the work you're putting in and showing us that we're moving towards a goal and kind of tirelessly moving towards that, showing up in the community. Leadership, I will tell you, Chief, I've spoken with a lot of officers at events you go to when they're crossing people on the street or they're around, and they won't tell you this, but they said the leadership of the department to get us through COVID and these other issues that have come up has been exceptional. So, and they're not just telling me to tell me, it's unasked. So, and I think you've shown that in the Zoom meetings we've had and everything we've done moving forward. We talked about mental health, drug use. I talked to parents, I talked to people in the community, and you are turning into the contact person that they really rely on and trust for that. And I know the drug issue is not going to go away. And we had the sheriff in here, and the problem just seems to grow and grow. So spoken with students, resource officers has been a huge help to a couple of them. And then in preparation for this meeting, one thing I do, I look at the police log, right? And I go over past couple months that you've had to deal with, and there've been homicides in there, and there've been a vehicle crash that's unfortunately was fatal, and things of that nature, chasing someone on foot that could have ended very badly. So all those things that you do are just very much appreciated. And as we move towards these goals, and you're going to update us and with the dashboard and everything else, it's appreciated by this board. So I want to thank you coming in. Thank you for updating us, and we'll look forward to the next update.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate it. And I think having this look at, what we do and how we do it and having the community input, it is going to make us a better police department, because we want everyone to have trust in us and be able to come to us, and having a deeper look into what we do is important for self-reflection and making us serve the community better. So we're appreciative of that as well, and appreciative of the support of the board and the town.
Great. Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thanks. You
Thank
too.
you.